Welcome everyone to an exciting webinar we have in store for you today. We've got Mike Provenzano from Magnit, who will be speaking on leveraging data to create a competitive advantage. Advanced Partners, we're happy to sponsor this webinar. We specialize in providing working capital to growing staffing firms nationwide. Before we get started, I'd like to hand it off to Erica to go over some housekeeping items. Erica?
Thanks, David. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here today. First off, this webinar is being recorded. A link will be sent to everybody via a post-event email following the event. If you have any questions you would like to submit to our speaker, please use the Ask a Question widget located in your console. A survey will launch at the conclusion of this event. We hope you'll take a moment to complete it. We appreciate any feedback you have, as it will help us to fine-tune these events for the future. Lastly, if you experience any technical issues, please look for the help widget. It is shaped like a question mark at the bottom of your screen. With that, I give it to you, Mike. Take it away.
Sounds good. Erica and David, thank you very much for having me. And by way of introduction, I'm Mike Provenzano, VP of Talent Intelligence at Magnit Global. What that means is basically I lead our talent intelligence solutions from a product and platform perspective, as well as the consulting teams around our customer and supplier networks. So today we'll start with just a quick overview of the platform and how it can be leveraged by folks in the supplier groups, as well as working with your customers for value-added services and things like that. Talk a little bit about the platform, where the data comes from, our methodology in putting it together, sort of a little bit in our sort of go-to-market hypothesis of why we built the tool, things like that, and then we'll jump in for a quick demo, actually show you how it works, and run through three or four sort of sample searches, things like that. As a quick thank you to those of you that are attending the webinar today, I may be stealing David's thunder, he may be coming on at the end again, but if you guys are working on anything currently, you're working with a customer, you're working with an RFP, things like that, maybe providing some data in a location that you might not be intimately familiar with. At the conclusion of the webinar, you'll have contact information for Erica, David, myself, and possibly John Valenti from the Magnit team. Feel free to reach out. We're happy to put together a sample for you, maybe two to three jobs, things like that, in a location that you might need help with on any current projects that you might be working on. So we'll start with the presentation. It does not look like it's on screen. Erica, can you just jump in and just let me know that you are seeing it on screen?
Yep, you're good.
Perfect.
Got it.
All right, great. So let's start. We'll talk a little bit about the platform, who used it, things like that. So, our customers range from our commercial customers. We have our healthcare customers as well under Magnit Global. We talk about sort of the Fortune 100, things like that we work with on a day-to-day basis across the globe. We have customers in over 40 countries now. We're capturing data in over 160 countries. We're publishing data in about 90 countries. Really, but if you look at sort of the commercial side of the business, it's really sort of the who's of brands, McKinsey, BlackRock, Google or Alphabet, right? Apple, Accenture, Ernst & Young. But we also have a number of large service providers that are using it as well. Kelly, Azure One, Randstad, Capgemini, things like that. So, the product sort of serves two markets. There are customers that are doing their own research. There are suppliers and MSP also who are leveraging this data to service their customers. It runs a full gamut, all the way from consumer brands all the way to oil and gas exploration, things like that. So we're covering really the full gamut of industries, or the full spectrum of industries, in really any, I would say, let's say, benchmark position that you would think out there, right? Everything from administrative assistants to, I love this one. This is my favorite example: underwater welders in oil and gas for offshore rigs, things like that. All of those data points are covered. But going a little bit further, we'll talk about sort of the how it's used, things like that. So for the supplier network, really what we're seeing is a lot of folks using it for RFP responses, right? I'm sure we've all received a lengthy spreadsheet from a potential customer or prospect, things like that, talking about how you would service those jobs, what you would price them at, sort of what the markup breakdown is, things like that on those jobs. Really having data at your fingertips to help populate those data sets, things like that, and not necessarily relying on last price paid or any type of special like tier one engagements that you might have with some of your customers or anything there. A lot of customers also are looking for a little bit more out of their suppliers and out of their vendors at this point. So differentiating yourself by being able to provide rate card development or rate card management over time for those customers is a huge uplift for the services that you provide, as well as being able to help them with ad hoc research. Maybe they're adding an outsourced team that they haven't before, right? It's outside of their core competencies. Maybe they are let's take oil and gas for specific. That's sort of a great niche industry, and they're hiring a development team to build sort of like their IT resources and things like that, right? They're full of roughnecks, drilling advisors, drilling supervisors, health and safety people. Like, they don't hire a lot of technologists. So, being able to provide that service to them and help them know what the markets are, either domestically or nearshore or offshore, really will help separate you out from the other suppliers they use in their network. And it doesn't, it's not just oil and gas. It's really anyone, right? If we think about staff augmentation at its core, really is, the companies that do it best do their core competency to the best of their ability. They hire a lot of that talent internal for extended terms or even, as full-time engagements. And really, when they need something that augments that talent is when they're going out to that staff aug role. And it may not be roles that they're familiar with hiring. And, you being able to provide insights into that, not only on what to pay for that contractor, what type of engagement you should be engaging them in, or the availability of talent in the locations that they're looking at, really will put you heads and shoulders above the rest of the folks that are in that supplier group that they're working with. Going through sort of the data, where it comes from, things like that. The Magnit Global Intelligence Universe really is made up of three pillars. This should actually be 2.05. It says 205. It seems that I missed a decimal point in my typo. So if anyone's a math nerd like I am, no, we are not collecting 205 billion data points. It's 2.05 billion data points. So this really comes from, like I said, three main pillars. We go out and we collect all of the data that we can in the public domain, right? Really, any rec that is out there that has a position, description, and pay rate alongside of it, whether it's a full-time rec or a staff augmentation rec, or even requests for bids for SOWs, things like that. We're going out, we're crawling the web. We have tens of thousands of sources that we're using, whether they're job aggregators, whether they're corporate websites, whether they are RFP portals, things like that. We are grabbing all of that data around pay that we can. We also have a large volume of commercial partnerships. So we are buying data from data vendors, whether they're talent intelligence vendors, whether they're compensation vendors, compliance vendors, things like that. We're buying all of that data as well, bringing that into the tool for dissemination and analysis. The third piece really is the secret sauce behind the talent intelligence platform. So Magnit Global, dealing with a large volume of workers. I think we have a little bit under $1 billion a year in spend under management in our MSP and VMS programs globally. We are taking all of that data as well, and we are bringing that into that talent intelligence platform. That allows us to look at the full life cycle of that data, right? The date the rec was posted, how many submittals it got, how long it was open, whether there was back and forth on pay rates, things like that. So if they posted it at a low market rate, was it negotiated up to a higher market rate? All of those data points come together to populate the data inside of PayIntel. Now, PayIntel is a software platform, but it is also sort of propped up on the back end by the services group. So there is myself and a team of 20 on the backside who are working day to day with our customers, fulfilling data, doing data validation, doing research, building out job titles, descriptions, job taxonomies, things like that for our customers, as well as a really wide network of what we call the Skills Village. Skills Village is basically our local eyes and ears on the ground that help us validate rates and engagements and compliance data inside the platform. I would love to say I know everything about every job and every location, but to be perfectly honest with you, like I physically can't do that. So I don't have the mental capacity to know what a welder in, let's say, I don't know, offshore Japan makes versus a welder in offshore Texas, right? We are focusing on leveraging those contractors that we have in our network, right? They're paid engagements that we have with these contractors from certain suppliers and things like that, and they have specializations, well, whether it's technology, manufacturing, like industrial, consumer goods, things like that, pharmaceuticals, to really tell us what's going on in that industry, right? What are the most common engagements? What are the most common job titles? What does the supply demand look like for certain skill sets in certain locations, as well as some of the compliance data. Many of you will know as you go, here in the States, if you go state to state, compliance data for state level statutory is going to be different. And it's vastly different as you transfer out throughout the world. Here in the US, we're sort of used to a roughly 16 to 25% statutory level on employer side fees. If you go to places like India, places like Sweden, Germany as well, and the Netherlands, you're seeing things that are much higher, right? Germany on the employer side, if we don't even bring in allowances, India on the employer side, if we're not even bringing in allowances, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 45.7 to 45% on just the employer side statutory. That doesn't even bring in the concept of basic pay versus CTC. So sort of as you dig under the hood and get into real pay analysis, you're seeing the complexities that go into it. In that, then you add in supplier markups and special tier engagements and things like that. It sort of, nobody knows how you get to that final number. And this is where pay intel comes into place. It not only will supply you with a pay rate in what I would call local nomenclature. So when we display a pay rate in India, it's based in basic pay. If we do it here in the US, it's gross base pay that's coming in. Whether you do that hourly, weekly, monthly, daily, all comes in as well. And if those time ranges are different, so here in the US, we are used to a 40-hour work week. Again, we'll pick on India a little bit. We are looking at a 45-hour work week, but we're typically communicating pay rates in monthly pay rate. And that monthly pay rate is typically advertised in basic pay, right? So it's sort of, you're looking at the talent, and the talent's only looking at the pay that's coming back to them. They don't really worry about the CTC cost, where here in the US, we're always talking about gross base pay, which includes the CT costs and the employer costs here in the US. So moving ahead, possibly moving ahead. Erica, it seems that my PowerPoint has died.
Uh-oh.
Can you maybe advance that?
It's on slide 5 for me. It says total talent intelligence.
Perfect. It's on slide 4 for me, but we'll go to slide 5.
Okay.
Really, we hit on this on the last slide, to tell you the truth. This comes back to, like I said, the Pay Intel platform is a SaaS application platform that anyone can access with a web login, things like that, user access and password. But it's not a tool that sort of we log in and expect you to self-serve on. It's a tool that is backed up by a team of consultants, team of external consultants, over 1,000, like I said, in many countries around the globe. Pay is complicated. As an aside, like I have been in HCM and compensation consulting since I was 25. I'm a big hit at a party. If anybody wants me to guess what their salary is, like that's usually, a fun game that nobody likes to play. So, if you're not an expert and you're not in compensation or remuneration every single day, it's really tough to sort of bring in and analyze the data that's coming in. And we don't expect people to do that on the fly. So, if you're working with standard jobs or standard job descriptions, things like that, you're more than welcome to be in the tool, search for an accountant, give it a location, things like that, and it will spit the data back at you if you're familiar with that location. But we have tools inside of the platform. We have our consulting team externally here that's here to help you. So, we all the time we get requests from our customers, whether they're commercial customers or supplier customers, around like, hey, I have this job, I've never heard of it before. Can you help me figure out what we should be looking at in the platform, or what I should be looking at? One of my favorites that we got a couple months ago, we actually got an aerospace ceramics engineer from one of our customers. If anyone doesn't know what that is the person that makes these ceramic plates that go on the outside of a rocket or a shuttle, or, as everyone likes to call them, just spaceship. And they were like, we don't know what the market for this is. And, after doing some research and talking to our aerospace and defense clients and those consultants and things like that, like, it turns out there's somewhere between 16 and 30 of them in the world. So, our answer back to them, while, probably not the most academic or professorial, was you pay this person what they want, because there's just not enough of them to create a market where you could benchmark that job. The specialty that comes in around creating ceramics that will survive re-entry to the Earth's atmosphere, like, yeah, just pay that guy. Like, it's not it's not something that we can go out and we can benchmark all the time. Again, some of the more off the rack questions that we get a lot of times is you'll get an RFP, it'll just be a list of their internal job titles and things like that, right? Which isn't a great way to analyze the data. So they'll come to us and team with us around, is it this, what career level, things like that should we bring in for this as a standard offering for our customers. All right, let's try that slide switch one more time. There we go. So like I said, Pay Intel is a SaaS application, can be accessed with any web connection, user access, password, things like that is sort of the standard the way that we sell it. A lot of our commercial customers will use it inside of the VMS. So we have single sign-on functionality inside of the VMS. We also have the ability to hook it directly into the VMS. So they're providing prices and things like that right in the job requisition for hiring managers and anyone else that's working on any requisitions in the program. The other side of Pay Intel, and this is sort of like core to the belief of a lot of things that we do around our data and services. We're not here to get sort of like the next nickel out of you or things like that. If you have a Pay Intel subscription and you happen to have a data science team or a data engineering team or the expertise internally to pipe this data over to your organization, that's included in the platform. So if you have access to the platform, you can have access to an API of the data that's in that platform, right? You're buying a license to the data is the way that we see it. We don't necessarily say you're buying a license to software, right? The data that's in the software is really what's providing value. So whether you want to access that through the web platform or you get pretty fancy with SQL and Python on your side, like absolutely connect to the API, go grab the data that you need to, bring it down into any third-party system, do that analysis that you want to do or trending analysis, things like that over time. Many of our customers are accessing that way. And truth be told, like if you're doing things in bulk, it's actually a lot easier to do it that way, right? You write that query, it comes in, you can time it, you can have it run overnight, you can run it every day to look, you can run it every month to look at trends over time. You don't have to, set a calendar reminder to go in and pull the data one more time to get the new rates, right? So if you have that expertise, it can be hugely powerful. It was a really convenient time for my voice to go away too. So with that said, let's jump into the application. We'll run a couple sample use cases, things like that, and get on with our day, open up for some Q&A, and hopefully have a good discussion from there. So let's see if my share is going to work, which is always fun. All right. Erica, David, a little verbal confirmation. Are we seeing something that says Magnit Pay Intel up here on the left-hand side?
We are.
Wow, that is fantastic. I love it when a plan comes together. All right. So this is not necessarily the home screen for Pay Intel, but this is about where 95% of our users will go when they first go in. Searching the system can be done in a number of ways. I would say the majority of our folks, 9 times out of 10, will use this rate search functionality. Batch search is in essence the reciprocal of rate search. But what we'll do today is we'll use rate search, which is a single job across multiple variables, right? So we'll run a few jobs, a couple different locations, a couple different industries, things like that for comparison. Batch search goes the other way. Batch search says, give me a whole bunch of jobs, one set of variables, right? So one location, one industry, one engagement type. So for this, let's take a look at, we'll do some standard technology jobs. We'll pull in a full stack developer. For JavaScript and React, we'll select an industry, we'll do computers and technology. Now, any job in the system can be priced across any industry that you want to bring in. If you're not sure what industry you're fulfilling the job for, obviously all is going to give you sort of that aggregate roll-up median view of all of the industries that are down below. We'll set a couple different locations. I'm partial, I'm in Boston, so I'm going to pull in Boston, Massachusetts.
Hey, real quick, Mike, I
Yes,
think you've got to do a screen share. It's not showing up on I'm getting feedback. It's not showing up on the webinar for all to see.
It is not showing up on the webinar for everyone to see. Okay.
Unless somebody wants to write in that they're able to see it. Sorry.
Very odd. Let's try that again.
Oh, yeah, do it one more time.
Yep.
Thank you.
There we go. Are we seeing it now?
I think so. Thanks.
All right, perfect. Christine, I see you down in the chat. I appreciate you saying I can see it because I can't see what's going on screen. So we're flying blind at this point. Hopefully my instruments are working okay. So we have Boston, Massachusetts. I know Eric is in Dallas. A couple of other attendees in Dallas. So we'll pull in Dallas. Let's also pull in David's from Cleveland. So we'll pull in Cleveland, Ohio as well. And let's take a look at somewhere sort of not here. Let's take a look at Bangalore as well. All right, so we're going to bring in a contract worker. Actually, I'm going to take off Bangalore. I'm going to show you something on Bangalore in a second here. So we have Boston, Massachusetts, Dallas, Cleveland, Ohio, across computers and technology. We're going to bring in staff augmentation. If you wanted to see full-time employee base gross pay, you can do that as well here. You'll notice all the jobs in this system, since this is our consulting system, have the job description in here. This is our benchmark description that we use for consulting engagements, things like that. If you're working from a job library that you have internally, we actually do that during configuration. We ingest your job library and your job titles. So if you want to search for a job, you're using your nomenclature, your descriptions, things like that. The other good piece here is, every once in a while, you just get a list of skills. So what we do actually every time that we ingest a job description is we extract all the skills, skill terms and skill phrases out of that job description and put them in a skill repository. We actually do cross mapping to see sort of how prevalent a certain skill is in certain jobs across the industry. So if you're looking for a developer who also has, let's say, security skills and UI skills, things like that, we can tell you sort of across those jobs how common it is to see developers with those two skill sets. We'll go ahead, we'll hit get results. Obviously, we're going to run 3 different reports at once. The first one that we ran was this full stack developer in Boston, Massachusetts. That job description is going to come with you. You'll notice that we have Cleveland, Ohio over here on the left and Dallas, Texas as well. So looking at Boston, Massachusetts, obviously that job description comes in again. I like to call this sort of the above the fold line for anyone who is old like me and reads the newspaper every once in a while. You think of that bifold newspaper, you have the headlines up top and then sort of the follow-on stories below. This headline view will show you the median data from what's down in the table below, right? So we're going to show you median pay rate, median markup, median bill rate for the Boston area location that we brought in. So median bill rate, median markup, median pay rate, markup, and bill rate. And then down below, you get sort of a light version of talent intelligence, right? So hiring overview, how difficult is it to hire this position in Boston? What does the candidate pool look like? What does the average submittal time look like? Again, we talked about sort of where the data comes from and things like that. This is a composite of the data that we purchase and the data that we see on the transaction side, on the MSP side of our business. Candidate pool, you'll notice there's a little info link here. This is actually a ratio. Okay, so it's a ratio of candidates. It's not sort of everybody in the population that exists with that skill set, but it's a ratio of candidates to open requisitions that we see in the market at that point. So think of it this way: we treat every requisition as equal. Sort of take away the goodwill and brand recognition and things like that in the market. So let's say there's 10 companies hiring this today. There's actually 160 available people for those 10 requisitions. We boil it down to 16, meaning it's sort of how many are available for your requisition. Average submittal time, so this is going to be how long before you get that first candidate. And then we compare those back to national average. Being someone who lives in Boston and worked in Cambridge, Massachusetts for a very long time, you literally can't throw a rock without hitting a developer. So like seeing 16 candidates in a very short submittal time is not real surprising. That's sort of the technology hub here in New England, and everybody's graduating with a developer degree or a data science degree and things like that at this point. Everything that we do display in the system, you're going to see a full career grade. So of all the data that we collect, since all of the sources have different leveling architectures and things like that, what we do is we break all of those apart and we push them all back into this sort of semi-standard 5-level grading. Everything from 1 to 3 years of experience, 10 plus years, think of it as, sort of entry level through SME. You're going to get pay rates, markups, and bill rates for all of those levels inside the system. Notice again, the markup has that info link and the bill rate has that info link. The suggested markups that we pull in here is what I call as a fully loaded markup. You're going to get the statutories, but you're also going to get standard supplier markups that go along with it. So GP and margin for those suppliers, or commission if you're in the UK, things like that for the suppliers that come in, plus all the statutory fees that go along with it. Bill rate is going to be everything except for VAT or GST. So really, this is the only system today where you're going to be able to sort of decompile a bill rate. And this is sort of where customers on the staff augmentation side are getting more savvy. They're not just comparing bill rate to bill rate. They're looking at pay rate, how it builds out, and how they get to bill rate today. And as a supplier who's working with them as a vendor, like it's definitely in your own best interest to have that data in front of you, know where your margins are, know where the statutory is, and things like that. So let's say that you're competing against another supplier in a competitive situation, like that you can't supply this job for, let's say, less than $80 an hour based on current market rates and what your GP and margin needs to be in the statutories in that location. If you're up against someone who is bidding $60 an hour for that job, you're more apt to have that conversation with the customer and say, like, the market wage for that job is $45 an hour. The statutories in Massachusetts are going to come up to, let's say, 20%. So now you have that 45, you have $9 is just in statutory. That's $54. Like, is there a supplier out there who's working for 1.2% and really, in their GP and margin? If they are, they're either A, trying to buy your business, or B, really scraping sort of the entry level supplier, talent supply to work on those requisitions. So, like, yes, could you get people below market? Most likely. Do you want those people working on your projects and staff augmentation engagements? Probably not, right? You want people with experience. You want people that are, median talent level in the market, or even advanced talent level in the market. Like, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to attract those people for 20 or 30% below market. So, you're sort of saving them from a headache that's down the road at some point. You'll also notice that we brought in 3 locations here, right? So we brought in Cleveland, we brought in Dallas, we brought in Boston. This gives us another really common use case. Since I won't use the word about 2020 or things like that happened in March. So there's been this move to remote work, right? Everyone sort of sees offices now as like optional, ancillary. You have sort of remote first organizations. You might have hybrid organizations, things like that, where sort of that 5-mile commuting radius or 10-mile commuting radius, or even 50, let's say, in other locations, really doesn't come into play. And if you talk to customers who have been doing staff augmentation for a long time or engaging with contractors for a long time, they're sort of used to fishing in those same waters, right? So what does a contractor cost within 10 miles of my building, right? If that contractor never needs to enter that building, right? You're doing, let's say, no-touch onboarding, you're doing, remote onboarding, things like that. You're shipping them equipment for them to use or anything else. Like, you can expand that search out. So in this case, Dallas and Cleveland are both less expensive to hire this job. So if they're open to remote work, let's say that they're hiring a very senior resource for this, right? More likely to be open to remote work for someone who has a lot of tenure in the industry, things like that. You can open their mind to sort of other engagements, other locations that they can go and search for this. Things like, I know this will probably be surprising to a lot of people, but full stack developers. Yes, I said you can't throw a stick without hitting one in Boston, but like Jacksonville, Florida is the same thing. Sort of Austin was the new San Francisco 5 years ago, right? So there's a ton of developers there. You're looking for data science, right? There's hotbeds of data science in Manhattan, Kansas, right? Coming out of Kansas State, and actually Texas El Paso are 2 of the largest colleges graduating data science degrees. Obviously the classics like University of Chicago, mathematics program, things like that, MIT, they're obviously graduating a lot, but they're in high volume, high congestion, highly competitive locations. So if you're sort of like wading into the world of business analytics and data intelligence, things like that, like you can look in other places and find really highly competent, highly skilled people for less money than you would pay in Chicago or Cambridge, Massachusetts, things like that, really by leveraging this type of data. So again, this is going to be pay difference by location. If let's say that we were searching across borders or things like that, again, we have pay rate here. If we wanted to bring in bill rate instead of pay rate, we can do that as well. So you just hit this little drop down here. We'll give you the option to do that. And since I'm sharing my screen, it's not going to give me the option, but really you can compare across anything in the table should you want to, or any of the data points in the table as well. Everything is going to be provided in min, average, mid, and max. Again, across all of those career grades. You can do the cross multiplication in the table to get the actuals, things like that there as well. You can also use this markup table to dissect information that you're getting, right? So, hey, we've always hired this at X number of dollars, right? The sort of roll-up math that we did earlier around hiring below market, you can do that the other way, right? So our last price paid was X. You can use the statutory to bring that in to sort of see what they were paying from a pay rate perspective on that X figure from a last price paid. So again, we brought in Boston. If we wanted to look at one of the other locations as the anchor, let's bring in Dallas. Really, all of that's going to come down right here. And then you'll see our comparisons changed below. Let's say that you have one of those open-minded customers and they're open to looking at, good Lord, the share. Okay. We go into modified locations here. Let's say that we do want to look at Jacksonville, Florida. So we're going to look at Jacksonville, Florida for this role, bring that in. We'll hit save changes. So now we've added that down below, right? It's actually going to be one of the cheaper locations, but it's also added that search over here to the top, right? So if you're, let's say, doing this live with a customer and you're looking for the most effective place, right? The location optimization exercise that we all do. If you're doing that modified location, you don't have to go back out, run another search, come back in, add it to a search, things like that. Like the system, is, let's say, somewhat intuitive, right? It knows a little bit about what you're doing or the exercise that you're trying to do. Like, we're not going to make you go back out and run another search. We also trend data over time. So, this is bill rates as of the 1st of April. We update the data every single month in the system. That data, once it's saved to a rate card, I know rate cards sort of have that, I would say proper noun use in the industry. Rate cards in the system really is just a saved search, right? It's grouping a bunch of jobs together that you want to follow. Once you save it to a saved search, we actually start a delta table on the back and we trend the data for every single saved search that we have in the system. Show you a quick example of that. We'll jump into that in a minute here. Let's say that you're working on with a customer and neither you or them are familiar sort of with the engagement architectures in a certain location. We have this tool here, which is called negotiation worksheets, which is available for all of the countries in our system. Again, this is a demo system, so it's a limited list that you're seeing here. But I love to pick on India during demos just because it's so complicated. So if we go here and we pull in Karnataka, let's call this our demo worksheet. Let's say that this is 1,100 Indian rupees per hour. We bring this in, it's going to show you every bit of the statutory breakdown in that location. So you'll see the Provident Pension Fund, Fund Administration, private pension, national insurance, right, things like that. For India, since there is such a high prevalence around allowances, we also bring in the high prevalence allowances, but we don't populate them, right? So if you choose to participate in those types of allowances with your engagements, like you can bring that in. And for those of you that don't know what any of these statutory fees are, we are putting the definitions in there as well. We're also giving you whether there's a maximum or a minimum on those pay-ins as we go through. But we'll bring that in here. We go down below, you'll see your overhead and GA and then profit that comes in. And then you have this markup here of 67.75. We were talking earlier about India, right? Roughly 45% statutory rate without allowances, 44.75. So we were pretty close. This tool also allows you to create customized worksheets. So if you have a certain statutory rate, or not a certain statutory rate, if you have a certain markup rate with a customer, right? Let's say that you're a preferred supplier with a customer and you offer them a lower rate because you get a higher volume, things like that. You can customize any of the data that you see in the table above. Usually what you're going to customize is the supplier cost and profit and save it as a customer name. Then any search that you run in the system or any rate card that you have saved in the system, you can apply that customer's rate to it and overwrite the data that we have from the market. So let's say that you're working with Nike, right? And you're supplying 1,000 workers a year in Beaverton, Oregon. and Nike gets a profit rate of not to exceed 5%. Right? You could create that here. Your overhead in GA, let's call that 5%, and then your 5% here for profit. I know that we're looking at India, but just for this example, we'll pull it in. So now you have that customized rate down below of 54.75. Once you save this, you can apply it at any point. So if you're working on a new project for them, you can always have that rate for your customer right at your fingertips, because at some point you're creating your own market. You don't need to worry about what the benchmark market is. So let's take a look, again, some of the trending data, things like that. So up here is our rate cards menu. This, again, like I said, is just our way of saying saved searches. We'll take a look here and come down for one that I created a while back here. So we have a NetApp demo that we built. NetApp's a customer, so I'm okay to use their name. But again, we were looking at those full stack developers. Like I said, I'm kind of biased to Boston. We're in my consulting product, so Boston's in here, Dublin's in here. So if we bring that in, we take a look, we open that up, zoom in a little bit for you here. You notice that all of these prices now have this sort of change indicator here, right? So it's a delta indicator, meaning either it's increased or it's decreased. Same thing across markup and same thing across bill rates. We go ahead, you see here February 2004, so the data's from 2 months ago. If I hit change, you can actually see the actual dollars and cents change, the percentages change, and then finally the bill rate changes. Now, we can say, you know what, this falls out of where I want to be for market competitiveness. Let's go ahead and hit update rates. So all of our change went to 0, and now you have today's rates inside the system, right? You can use that. You can share it with your customers. You can use it for research. Any type of comparison that you want to do. Let's say that you made an oopsie and you want to do the undo button. There we go. We're back to those rates when we save them. We had that conversation with our customer. We talked about updating the data system and things like that when we do it. We're actually pulling in data constantly, multiple times a day. We have the ability to update the data set, I would say cautiously on a daily basis. We don't do it just for normalization of data. We don't want, let's say, Erica pulling a report, going down the hall to Dave's office and saying like, hey, look at this, these developers are super spiky in the market. And then Dave pulls up the system a week later and the data is different. Doing it on a monthly basis gives sort of that time for transactions and things like that and customer interaction and conversations to happen, as well as the fact that we don't push that new data at you. The data is warehoused on the back. You can choose to bring it into your rate cards, or you can keep it warehoused, right? So if you have a, let's say, prevailing rate with a customer, things like that, like every time you go to that rate card, we're not going to give you today's rate. We're going to give you the rate at the point where you used that data for research or customer interaction, things like that. And you can choose when to bring that new data into your system. All the data in the system, like I said, is available via API. It's available on the platform. Obviously, there's things around data transportation, things like that. You have the ability to share data either off the system or inside the system. There's a couple different views here. So if we look, this is just a single job detail view. If we come in here, we have this card view available for you, which is sort of, more presentation ready, right? You're having a conversation with a customer. You just want to talk about median and max bill rates. Like you can click off those options. Now you're looking at max bill rate. You have max and median for comparison levels, things like that. If we click on that graph, it's actually going to give us the change over time. So like all of these tools are available for you to have those conversations, whether they're live or you want to export data out of the system or you want to get data via the API. You can do all of that here. Going back to that rate card, should we want to share it, right? You have the ability to share. If we hit share, that's all of our users in the system that we can share that data with. If we want to export that data, we have the ability to export that data as well. And I'm way zoomed in so nobody can see it. But if I hit export, you have the ability to export those searches. Those searches can be done in local currency. They can be normalized into a single currency. It's really up to you how you want to interact with the system and how you want that data to come out, and really what the purpose of the sharing is. If you want to share the visuals and things like that, not share the variables, share the visuals, you have the ability to do that as well. You can export to PDF. You have the ability to grab those visuals. In an upcoming release, we're doing sort of that rate search screen, which is, it's a sort of a nice ta-da to show to your customers, like this graph across the top with the market rates, candidate pool, submittal time, and this data as well as this. is actually going to be available in the upcoming release to be an exportable view for our customers going forward. So I think that's the end of my spiel. I'd love to open up to Q&A. I do want to reiterate that offer and steal Dave's thunder one more time. Like, if you're working on a project today and you need some help and you're considering using a talent intelligence tool like this, reach out. Our contact information is going to be in there at the end. We'll do our best to help you, obviously within volume constraints as needed. So, David, I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Mike, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And what a generous offer of you and the team to offer to our attendees. So thank you. A couple of questions trickled in, and maybe it's, meant for, obviously one-on-one, but, how long does it take to get set up, and, kind of how does the program work, right? Is it based on users, or can you kind of talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we have sort of two flavors of offerings, right? We're not Baskin Robbins. There's not 31 flavors or 36 flavors, whatever they have at this point. If you come to the table with a job library and you want to see your job library in the tool with your job descriptions, things like that, roughly we target about 4 weeks for setup, because we're actually going to do the job matching analysis on your behalf and then populate the data set with your jobs. And then, if you have historical rates, things like that, we'll actually do gap analysis during that configuration. But from, let's say, welcome call to you're in searching for your jobs and using it on a daily basis, 4 weeks at most. If you are a supplier and you're coming to the table and you're saying, like, I just need access to any job I get in these 4 industries, that's much faster. So we have what we call off-the-shelf taxonomies for different parts of the organization, different industries, things like that. So if you primarily work in, let's say, the general industry bucket, you're working with everyone from technology to pharmaceuticals or consumer brands, light industrial. Like, we have taxonomies that we populate the system with, and that's much faster. It's something that we can do within a day or two. Usually that turnaround time is, the lag there is getting everyone together for training. More so than anything else. That's an automated data process where we're just loading files into the application for you.
Okay. No, thank you. Hopefully that answers the question. And then somebody said, can I customize rates prior to sending the data to customers?
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about that on the negotiation worksheet. So like I said, we have many, many large suppliers that are using this, Agile One, Kelly OCG, things like that. I'd be a fool to say that they're just giving the rates that we give to their customers. Something is going into the magic black box of that MSP and coming up with their own price. So whether that's on the markup side, whether that's on the pay rate side, whether that's on the sort of like the project premium side, things like that, like, absolutely, it can be customized. It can be customized in the system using the negotiation worksheet. It can be customized post transport out of the system. So anything's going to come out, like I said, in a flat file view or an Excel file view. Like, you have the ability to do any type of data manipulation that you want in that data.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I don't see any other questions. Mike, I can't thank you enough for making the time, sharing some of the exciting things that you're doing in your role with Magnit. We obviously appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for attending. If you want Mike's contact information, should be on the screen shortly, and we will follow up with you on it. And then please feel free to reach out to Mike. And we always love a good success story. So if you use the data, win a deal, or it helps change the conversation with a customer, please let Mike and I know. Thank you again, and have an awesome day.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.